If I asked you to pick the fastest path from point A to point B, your brain would instinctively choose the straight line. It makes sense. Shortest distance, direct, logical, right? Well, let's see. As you can see, the most straight line is the one that is arriving at the end. Because in physics, standard logic is often wrong. And in this case, the straight line loses, and badly. This is the brachistochrone curve, and it proves something that ancient masters understood for thousands of years, and yet modern productivity culture still completely ignores. To go faster, you don't push harder on a straight line, but you drop deeper through the ups and downs of life to accumulate momentum. But most of us are living our lives on this straight line. We track our habits, we optimize our sleep. We've been sold the 1% better everyday dream. And we treat growth like a staircase, a constant linear climb. But eventually you hit the ceiling. And the harder you push, and the heavier it feels. You're not necessarily burning out, let's be clear, but you're literally feeling stuck. And that is a pain in the ass because you're doing everything that you've been told, and yet nothing seems to move. As you'll discover in this video, the problem isn't your discipline. The problem is your geometry. You've been trying to force a linear solution onto a non-linear reality. And today, we're going to look at why the 1% rule is actually only half of the story, and what every ancient wisdom traditions understood about the other mysterious half. If you're new here, welcome. I'm Ale Grampa, a serial entrepreneur on a mission to merge science and ancient wisdom. And this is All Green Wisdom, where we reconnect the dots between neuroscience and spirituality, physics and mysticism, to prepare for the greatest shift in human history, the consciousness revolution. And by the end of this video, you'll understand 3 core concepts that will drastically reframe how you see your life. You'll understand why linear models are only half of the personal growth journey, what ancient masters from Tibet to Jerusalem and India all agreed about personal transformation, and why the drop, the part that feels like you're losing ground, is actually where all of the momentum comes from. So let's dive in. You've been told a beautiful story about growth. 1% better every day. Compound interest, the staircase to success. Stack your habits, optimize your protocols. Just trust the process. And it's not wrong. It works for a while. But then something happens. You're still climbing, but somehow the stairs aren't going up. You hit a ceiling. You add another protocol, another system, another hack, but nothing seems to work. Always the same results. I still remember the first time that I really noticed this pattern in my entrepreneurial career. There's a beautiful book about this by Seth Godin, specifically talking about the dip, the art of knowing when to quit or when to stick. I spent over a decade on this hamster wheel, tracking everything, optimizing everything, and I kept hitting the same ceiling over and over and over until I finally understood what I was missing. And here, what no productivity guru will ever tell you about this. You're not failing at the system. It's the system that is incomplete. You've been trying to integrate a version of yourself that you haven't recognized yet. Think about this for a second. It's like updating the apps on your phone that is running the wrong operating system. The app works fine. The OS is the one with the problem. You get on customer support, you keep quitting and relaunching the app all day long, while no one is revealing to you it's time to upgrade what's underneath. But upgrading the system is not like shifting from, let's say, iPhone 16 to 17. It's not seamless. It's actually much more like switching from a PC to a MacBook for the very first time. It requires effort. It's messy. And it's time consuming. And the reason why this is so hard to change, it's because your brain is a prediction machine. And like the firmware engraved in your mind, the default program of your brain is willing that tomorrow feel exactly like yesterday because it craves consistency, predictability, and safety. And when you try to change it, when you try to upgrade into the real next level, your brain registers that as an error, a threat, something to be corrected. This is why linear growth eventually feels like pushing a boulder uphill. The incremental improvement that brought you where you are today stops feeling predictable. You need a big change, but the fear of the unknown triggers your nervous system's resistance. The straight line is willpower versus biology. And remember, biology always wins. Eventually. Seems crazy, right? On the one hand, we have our conscious choice. We want growth and optimization. While on the other, we have biology. Part of the same system, but often playing against us if we don't learn its rules. And I guess you're like me, you're obsessed with personal development, and yet you often feel betrayed because the very same rules that were working perfectly and brought us where we are today, they have now not only stopped working, they're even playing against us. So let me get back to physics for a moment and try to understand more about this mechanism. Look at what's actually happening with the curved path. The ball doesn't push harder, it doesn't try more, it simply drops deeper. It actually uses gravity, an external force, instead of relying purely on internal effort. It converts this potential energy into kinetic energy by going down before it goes forward. And that's where it picks up the speed. But when you project this into your life, this drop doesn't really feel like progress. It actually feels more like losing ground. Maybe it's a business that fails, a relationship that ends, an identity that cracks, a belief system that no longer holds true. So at that point, your linear mind starts to scream, "What are you doing? That's the wrong way. Pull up, work harder, fix it. You're becoming a failure." But your soul knows something different. This is the drop. This is where momentum is born. You're not actually falling, you're loading for the next stage up. And what physics shows us now, it's the same truth that ancient traditions across all of the globe taught us for millennia, depicting the timeless path of spiritual ascension. Growth isn't a linear path. It's actually a spiral composed of two very distinct phases: recognition and integration. Recognition is the drop, the sudden shift, the moment that you see something that you couldn't see before. It's fast, it's disruptive, it can happen in an instant, and it cannot be achieved through incremental effort. It can only be assessed when your conscious mind let go over the current reality that you are projecting and allows yourself to see the unseen. Integration, instead, it's the slow marathon, the daily repetition, the 1% that stabilizes what you've already recognized. It's slow, it's gradual, and it's what allows you to maintain the new reality shift into your daily new normal. So the straight line is all about integration, not recognition. And that's why it loses over time. Because the curve, instead, includes both. The drops that generate momentum, and then the run that converts it into distance. And this isn't just philosophy. Elite performance labs around the world have recognized this wisdom and used it to develop modern technologies that rewire the minds of the top athletes and executives. Think about the crazy stunts of the Red Bulls team, whether it be jumping off a cliff or flying down a mountain. All of these athletes didn't get there by training 1% harder every day. They completely rewired their operating system. In dedicated programs like the Red Bull's Human Performance Center or Liminal Labs in Los Angeles, the cutting edge of human performance is all about training the mind to access states where previous limits simply don't apply anymore. flow states, breakthrough recognition, the zone. These are all moments of recognition, temporary access to expanded consciousness that only after gets stabilized through integration. And I recently spoke with the former CEO of Liminal Labs on Wholegrain Wisdom podcast, and his thesis is astonishingly clear. As AI continues to eliminate computing and labor limitations, the only sustainable advantage really becomes consciousness itself. So the question isn't how hard can you keep working, but it's how deeply can you see and recognize the unseen. For years, I studied everything that I could get my hands on about neuroscience, quantum biology, biohacking, even Eastern philosophy and Western mysticism. I was looking for the unified theory, the thing that connected all of the dots. And somewhere along the way, I started noticing something strange. The same pattern kept appearing across cultures, across centuries, across belief systems that had no contact with each other. They all understood what the brachistochrone proves. Human transformation isn't linear, but has indeed the two phases. In the Buddhist texts of the Mahamudra, among the most sacred teachings of Tibet, they call the first phase of recognition rigpa, awareness recognizing itself, a sudden seeing that cannot be earned through effort alone. And then comes the 4 yogas, gradual stabilization of what was recognized. The Kabbalah, the mystical heart of Jewish tradition, maps the tree of life as ascending levels of consciousness. But to ascend, you first had to break through the klipot, the veils, a disruptive seeing. Only then happens tikkun, the slow repair and the gradual integration. Vedanta, a major school of Hindu philosophy, taught that liberation comes through jnana, knowledge arising in just a moment. But that moment must be followed by sravana, manana, and nididhyasana, hearing, reflecting, and meditating. So here we have different languages, different centuries, and even different continents, but remarkably, always the same structure. Recognition, sudden, disruptive, non-linear, and on the other hand, integration, gradual, stabilizing, the famous 1% daily. The drop and the run, the curve and the straight line, all together. And as we see, once we connect the dots, it's clear how science and spirituality aren't enemies. They're the same truth, just expressed in different languages. The mystics drew us the map. Physics proved it, and somehow the productivity world we live in forgot half of it. Because here's is the trap that most high performers fall into. You've mastered integration, the habits, the routines, the systems, the discipline. You're polishing the container, but without recognition, you're stabilizing a version of yourself that was never meant to be the destination. You're climbing a ladder against the wrong wall. You can optimize every rung. You can climb faster and even more efficiently than anyone else. But if the ladder is against the wrong wall, well, then you're just getting better and going nowhere. So Atomic Habits really is just half of the story. The other half is what I call atomic awakening. And look at the curve one more time. Recognize the current status of your operating system. If you've been feeling stuck, you're not stuck because you're lazy. You're not stuck because you lack discipline. You're stuck because you've been on the wrong geometry all along. The straight line looks efficient. It feels responsible. It's what everybody told you to do. But the curved path, the one that dips before it rises, that's where the real breakthrough lives. And this is the question that I leave you with today. Stop asking, what more can I do? That's the straight line talking. Start asking, what am I refusing to see instead? That's where the curve begins. What identity are you gripping so tightly that it's becoming a friction? What belief system no longer serves you but feels too scary to release? Where is the drop waiting for you that you keep trying to avoid? At Whole Grain Wisdom, this is exactly what we work on. Techniques to accelerate recognition, to create the drop deliberately instead of waiting for a crisis to force it. And systems to build integration that actually sticks. Routines aligned with your energy, not just your calendar. The same principles that elite performance labs use, but aligned with ancient wisdom and your soul's trajectory. Not just external metrics, but deep internal alignment. And if you want to go even further on how elite performers actually train their minds for this kind of breakthrough, I made a full video exactly on that. You'll find the link in the description. So if you're ready to stop grinding the straight line and start riding the curve, the link to join us is just below. The 1% story is only half of the story. The ancient masters knew it, the physics prove it, and now you know it too. So see you at the deep end.